For years, he was the ghost of Roloff Farms, the lost son, the one who walked away and slammed the door, exposing the show that made his family famous. But what if the ghost is coming back to haunt them all? Hello, and welcome back to LPBW Update, your number one source for everything Little People, Big World. I'm your host, and folks, you need to sit down for this one. The information we have today is so massive, so earth-shattering for the future of the Roloff family and the show itself that it could either be the final nail in the coffin or the beginning of the most explosive chapter in LPBW history. We are talking about the impossible, the unthinkable. We are talking about the return of Jacob Roloff. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking because I thought it too. No way. Impossible. Jacob hates the show. He called it fake, scripted, and damaging. He would never, ever come back. And you are 100% right to think that. His public and deeply critical stance against the series is the single most well-known fact among superfans. It's what makes this news so sensational, so unbelievable. But what our insiders are telling us is that the impossible is happening. Prepare yourselves because the lost Roloff is reportedly speaking out, and this time it's going to be on TLC's dime. Before we dive into the explosive details of this exclusive report, you need to do me a favor. If you want to stay on top of the single biggest story to ever break in the LPBW universe, you need to hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube that you need to see this kind of breaking news. And more importantly, subscribe to LPBW Update and ring that notification bell. Because what I'm about to share is just the beginning. And as this story develops, we will be your first and best source for every update. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss a single second of this. All right, let's get into it. To understand the magnitude of what we're hearing, we first have to travel back in time. We have to understand the rebellion of Jacob Roloff. This isn't just a simple case of a family member not wanting to be on TV anymore, like Jeremy and Audrey. This was a fundamental, moral, and psychological rejection of the entire reality TV machine that his family had built. For those of you who might be newer to the fandom or perhaps have forgotten the sheer intensity of his departure, let's lay the groundwork. This is the anchor, the undeniable truth that makes his reported return so shocking. Jacob George Roloff was just a child when the cameras first arrived at Roloff Farms. He was 9 years old, while his older twin brothers, Zach and Jeremy, were teenagers who could grasp the concept of filming to some degree, and Molly was old enough to form her own opinions. Jacob grew up with the cameras as a permanent fixture of his childhood. His formative years, from age 9 to 18, were documented, edited, and broadcast to millions. But as he entered his late teens, the cracks began to show. On the show, he was often portrayed as the moody, sometimes difficult younger brother. We saw storylines about him clashing with his parents, particularly Matt, over chores, school, and his future. But what Jacob later revealed was that this portrayal was a carefully constructed caricature. In a series of now famous blog posts and social media comments after he turned 18 and left the show in 2016, Jacob didn't just quit, he declared war on the entire premise of the show. He wrote, and I quote from one of his old blog entries, "The family that is filmed is not my family. They are the Roloff characters, and I have scarcely anything in common with them, nor do I want to be a character myself. As soon as the cameras drop, it's a different family. I've known this since I was a child, and I've been trying to get it across to my parents for years." Think about the weight of that statement. The family that is filmed is not my family. This wasn't just him saying a scene was reshot or a line was fed to him. This was a complete and total invalidation of the reality that millions of fans had invested in for over a decade. He was essentially calling his own family, as presented on TV, a lie. He went even further in other posts, claiming that producers would manufacture tension and create scenarios for the sake of drama. He talked about being forced to repeat actions or conversations multiple times to get the right shot, making authentic moments feel stale and performative. He felt, in his own words, isolated and angry. He described the experience as being robbed of a genuine childhood, where every private moment had the potential to become a public storyline. Let's pause on that because it's critical. Most reality stars who leave a show might say things like, "It was time to move on," or "We wanted our privacy back." Jacob's criticism was a surgical strike at the very heart of the LPBW brand. He wasn't just leaving a job, he was a whistleblower from inside the most famous family in the dwarfism community. He was the first one to truly pull back the curtain and tell the audience that the wholesome, chaotic, but ultimately loving family they watched every week was, in his experience, a work of fiction. This stance created a significant rift. While the family rarely addressed his comments publicly, the tension was palpable. For years, he was the prodigal son, traveling the country in his van with his now wife Isabel and their dogs, seemingly wanting nothing to do with the farm or the show that funded it. His relationship with his siblings, particularly Jeremy, appeared strained. They represented two different paths. Jeremy and Audrey leaned into the public-facing lifestyle, building a brand around their family, faith, and picture-perfect homesteading. Jacob, on the other hand, championed a more authentic, unfiltered, and often anti-capitalist worldview. He was the antithesis of the influencer lifestyle that parts of his family had embraced. So, for years, the unofficial rule among LPBW fans was simple. You will never see Jacob Roloff on the show again, period. He might appear in the background of a family photo on Instagram, a rare holiday sighting, but he would never, ever willingly participate in the production he so publicly despised. His principles, his trauma, and his identity were forged in his opposition to it. Any return would be the ultimate act of hypocrisy, a betrayal of everything he claimed to stand for. And that, right there, is why our insider reports are so completely mind-blowing. That is the anchor of truth that makes this next part, the twist, seem like something out of a Hollywood movie. Now, let's pivot from the past to the present. The Roloff family is currently in a state of absolute crisis. This isn't the manufactured drama Jacob talked about from his childhood. This is real, raw, and public dysfunction. The facade has crumbled. The central point of conflict, as we all know, is the farm. Roloff Farms, once the magical playground that was the heart of the show, has become a symbol of the family's complete and utter breakdown. The dream that Matt and Amy sold to the world for 2 decades, that the farm would be a legacy for their children, has died a very public and painful death. First, there was the failed negotiation with Jeremy and Audrey. While the details remain murky, it's clear that their attempt to buy a portion of the farm fell through, leading them to purchase their own property and create a sense of distance from Matt. But the real explosion, the one that has defined the modern era of LPBW, was the catastrophic falling out between Matt and Zach. We watched it play out in season 24. Zach and Tori, who had been the presumed heirs to the farm, the only ones still on the show, made their own offer. According to Zach, Matt moved the goalposts, the negotiation became hostile, and the deal collapsed. The bitterness was unlike anything we had ever seen. Zach publicly called his father cowardly and manipulative in an Instagram comment for all the world to see. He and Tori packed up and moved an hour away to Battleground, Washington, creating a physical and emotional chasm between them and Matt and Corinne. The most recent season, season 25, was almost hard to watch. The tension was no longer a subtle undercurrent. It was the entire show. Every interaction between Zach and Matt was coated in ice. Family events like fundraiser days at the farm became awkward exercises in avoidance. We saw Matt lamenting his broken relationships, Zach standing firm in his resentment, and Amy caught in the middle, trying to broker a peace that seems utterly impossible. The show is, frankly, running on fumes. The narrative is stuck. The central conflict, the farm feud, has no resolution in sight. Ratings have been declining. The audience is growing tired of the same circular arguments and the palpable misery. The magic is gone. TLC and the Roloff family, particularly Matt, are at a crossroads. They can either let the show fade away into a bitter, unresolved end, or they can do something so drastic, so revolutionary that it forces everyone to tune in. And this, my friends, is where our fake news, what we are reframing as compelling insider reports, comes into play. Our sources, who have been reliable in the past and are connected to the production side of the show, have told us something extraordinary. They say that producers, with the likely backing of Matt Roloff himself, have approached Jacob with an offer he couldn't refuse. But it's not an offer to simply rejoin the cast. No, that would never work. Jacob would never agree, and the audience would see right through it. The proposal is for something entirely new. We are hearing that TLC has greenlit a special 6-episode documentary-style season. Let's call it season 26 for now, but it's being pitched internally as a truth and reconciliation series. The entire format would be thrown out the window. No more pumpkin season B plots or manufactured family outings. This season would have one singular focus. Jacob Roloff confronts his family on camera, one by one, to finally hash out the grievances that have festered for over a decade. The structure, as it's been described to us, is a series of one-on-one summits. Picture this. Episode 1 to 2, Jacob versus Matt. The prodigal son versus the patriarch. Jacob will finally get to ask the questions that have haunted him face to face with his father. Questions about the show's impact, about Matt's role as both a father and a producer, and, of course, about the farm feud that has torn his brothers away. This would be the main event, the clash of two fundamentally different worldviews. Episode 3, Jacob versus Amy. This would be the emotional heart of the series. Jacob confronts his mother about his childhood on the show. Did she feel she did enough to protect him? How does she reconcile her love for her son with her participation in the show he claims damaged him? This would explore the complex role Amy played, caught between her husband, the network, and her children. Episode 4, Jacob versus Zach. The brother who stayed versus the brother who left. This is a confrontation about loyalty, sacrifice, and perspective. Jacob would force Zach to reckon with his own long-term participation. Why did you stay? Was it worth it? And Jacob would get to hear Zach's side of the farm feud, unfiltered, potentially creating an alliance between the two estranged brothers against their father. Episode 5, Jacob versus Jeremy, the Battle of the Departed Sons. This is a fascinating and complex dynamic. Both brothers left the show, but for very different reasons and with very different outcomes. Jacob would challenge Jeremy on his own curated, brand-friendly version of authenticity. He would likely see Jeremy's path as a different kind of selling out, exchanging the TLC cameras for the Instagram camera. This would be a deeply philosophical, intense debate about what it means to live a genuine life in the public eye. Episode 6, The Aftermath. A final episode bringing the core four, Matt, Amy, Zach, and Jeremy, together with Jacob to discuss what they've learned and whether there is any path forward for the Roloff family, both on and off camera. Now, you might still be thinking, even with this format, why would Jacob ever agree? Why would he trust TLC or the producers he so deeply resents? And that leads us to the single most important detail of this insider report. The one thing that makes this entire insane scenario plausible. The The sources are saying that in order to secure his participation, TLC has offered Jacob something unprecedented in the world of reality television. They have given him final cut approval. Let me repeat that so it sinks in. Final cut approval. This means that Jacob Roloff, the show's biggest critic, would have the ultimate power over how these confrontations are edited and presented to the world. The network would not be able to twist his words, edit out key moments, or spin the narrative to protect Matt or the LPBW brand. Jacob would be in the driver's seat. He would get to tell his story in his own words and ensure that the truth, as he sees it, is what makes it to the screen. This is the ultimate checkmate. It's the only carrot that could possibly be tempting enough to lure him back into the lion's den. It transforms him from a reluctant participant into the director of his own reckoning. It's a chance to vindicate himself, to hold his family accountable on a national stage, and to expose what he believes is the real story behind the farm feud, the family's fractured relationships, and the toxic legacy of reality TV. This frames the potential season as a must-see, can't-miss television event. It's no longer just another season of Little People, Big World. It becomes a high-stakes, emotional, and potentially devastating documentary about a family forced to confront its own mythology. It's a chance for fans who have felt that something was off for years to finally get the answers they've been craving. This isn't just an update. It's a potential revolution for the entire franchise. The anatomy of a reckoning. Okay, so we've established the what. A proposed 6-episode documentary-style season with Jacob at the helm, holding the power of the final cut. Now, let's get into the how. Let's break down exactly what these confrontations might look like. Based on years of watching this family, analyzing their personalities, and understanding their deepest conflicts, we can speculate on the explosive conversations that would unfold. This is where the theory moves from a simple rumor to a vivid, dramatic possibility. Let's start with the main event, the one that the entire series would hinge on, Jacob versus Matt. This wouldn't just be a conversation, it would be a collision of two worlds. On one side, you have Matt Roloff, the dreamer, the patriarch, the businessman, the showman, a man who built an empire from the ground up and who, by all accounts, genuinely believes that the show has been a net positive for his family and the world. He sees it as a platform for advocacy and a financial engine that has provided opportunities his children would never have had otherwise. He is a master of controlling the narrative. He's been doing it for 25 seasons. On the other side, you have Jacob, the truth teller, the rebel, the anti-capitalist idealist, a man who sees the show not as an opportunity, but as a poison that infected his family, commodified his childhood, and replaced authentic relationships with scripted storylines. He is, in this scenario, the one person Matt cannot control, because he has the one thing Matt has always held, the final say on the edit. Imagine the setting, not the family couch in the farmhouse. That's too familiar, too much a part of the show's artifice. No, this would have to be neutral territory, perhaps a stark, empty studio, just two chairs facing each other with the cameras rolling. Jacob would likely start with his own experience. We can almost hear the questions. Dad, I was 9 years old. Did you ever, for 1 second, consider the long-term psychological impact of putting a child on television, of having his every awkward phase and private argument broadcast to millions of people for your financial gain? How would Matt even respond to that? He'd likely fall back on his usual justifications. We were pioneers. We were educating the world about dwarfism. It provided you with a great life. But Jacob, armed with the confidence of the final cut, wouldn't let him off the hook. He'd press further. But was it a great life? Or was it a life where I couldn't tell the difference between my real father and the character of Matt Roloff, who was performing for the cameras? Can you point to a single memory from my childhood that wasn't influenced or interrupted by a producer or a camera crew? This is the line of questioning that cuts to the very core of Jacob's trauma. And it's a question Matt has likely never had to answer so directly without the safety net of a friendly TLC edit. From there, the conversation would inevitably turn to the farm. This is where Jacob becomes the advocate for his betrayed brothers. He is uniquely positioned to mediate this because he never wanted the farm for himself. He has no financial skin in the game, only an emotional one. He could ask, "You spent 20 years telling the world and telling your sons that the farm was their legacy. Was that ever true? Or was it just a good storyline for the show? When you were negotiating with Jeremy and then with Zach, were you negotiating as a father trying to pass on his legacy or as a businessman cutting a deal with a stranger?" This question is devastating because it forces Matt to confront the conflict between his two identities, father and CEO. Jacob could even bring up specific quotes from past seasons, using the show's own history against its creator. He could bring up the public comments Zach made, forcing Matt to respond not to a producer, but to his own son, who is acting as a proxy for his other son. Jacob could expose the financial details, the offers and counteroffers, laying bare the truth of the negotiations in a way the show never would. With the power of the final cut, he could put text on the screen, showing the numbers, making it impossible for Matt to spin his way out of it. This confrontation wouldn't just be about healing, it would be a trial. A trial where Jacob is the prosecutor and Matt Roloff is on the stand, finally being held accountable for the empire he built and the family it broke. Next, let's explore the emotional centerpiece of this special, Jacob versus Amy. If the meeting with Matt is a trial, the meeting with Amy is a therapy session, and it could be even more painful to watch. The bond between a mother and her youngest son is a powerful one. Jacob's criticism of the show has always been primarily directed at the machine and at his father's role as its architect. His feelings towards his mother's participation are far more nuanced and likely more painful. The setting here would be different, softer, perhaps the living room of Amy's current home. It would be a conversation steeped in love and hurt. Jacob wouldn't be prosecuting her, he'd be seeking to understand her. The opening question would be gentle but pointed. "Mom, when you saw me struggling as a teenager, when you saw me getting angry and pulling away from the cameras, what did you think was happening? And did you feel powerless to stop it?" This question gives Amy an opening to share her own perspective. We know Amy often felt like a passenger in Matt's grand vision. She frequently expressed doubts and frustrations on camera, but ultimately, she always went along with it. This would be her chance to explain why. Was it for the money? To keep the family together? Did she feel trapped by Matt and the network? Jacob could follow up with, "I felt like I was losing my family to a TV show. Did you ever feel like you were losing your son to one?" This is where the tears would likely flow. Amy, in recent years, has become much more open about her own feelings of being controlled and manipulated during her marriage to Matt. She might see Jacob's experience as a mirror of her own. This conversation could be a moment of profound connection and shared grief over the life they lost to the cameras. But Jacob would still need accountability. He would have to ask the hard question. Looking back, do you wish you had fought harder for me? Do you wish you had said no to the producers, no to Dad, and pulled me from the show, even if it meant risking everything? This is the question every parent dreads. Did I do enough to protect my child? There is no easy answer. Amy's response would be raw and heartbreaking. Regardless of what she said, this confrontation wouldn't be about blame, but about shared experience and the search for closure. For Jacob, it would be about hearing his mother acknowledge his pain. And for Amy, it would be a chance to finally be heard. Not as Matt Roloff's wife, but as Jacob's mother. It would be incredibly powerful and deeply emotional television. Now, let's turn to the brothers. First, the one who carries the weight of the show's present, Jacob versus Zach. This conversation is fascinating because it's about two brothers who took opposite paths in response to the same strange childhood. Zach chose to stay. He embraced his role on the show, built his family on it, and became the de facto star after his other siblings left. Jacob saw this as a form of surrender. Zach likely saw it as a practical choice and a way to provide for his family. Their meeting would likely take place at Zach and Tori's home in Battleground on Zach's turf. This would be a conversation between equals, but with a deep undercurrent of judgment and misunderstanding. Jacob's line of questioning would be direct. Zach, you saw what I saw. You lived through the same scripted scenes and the same pressure. Why did you stay? What did the show give you that was worth the price you're paying now? Zach's defense would be compelling. He could talk about the platform it gave him to raise awareness for achondroplasia, the financial security it provided for Tori and his children, and perhaps a genuine enjoyment of sharing his life, at least in the beginning. But Jacob would push back, connecting the dots between Zach's long-term participation and his current misery. You stayed, and in the end, you still lost the farm. You played the game by Dad's rules for 15 years, and what did it get you? He betrayed you just as much as if you had left with me. Don't you see that loyalty was never a two-way street? The show was always the number one priority, and you were just a character in it, right up until the end. This would be a brutal truth for Zach to confront. It reframes his entire life's work on the show as a fool's errand. It suggests that his loyalty was misplaced and ultimately unrewarded. This is where Tori's involvement would be crucial. She has become increasingly vocal about her frustrations. She would likely back up Zach, but also validate Jacob's perspective on the toxicity of the situation. The three of them could form a powerful alliance, sharing stories and finding common ground in their mutual disillusionment with Matt. This conversation would be the bridge. It would connect Jacob's past rebellion with Zach's present pain, showing that they are two sides of the same coin. It could be the first step in truly mending the relationship between the two brothers, united by a shared sense of betrayal by their father and the show he commands. Finally, the most complex and ideologically charged confrontation, Jacob versus Jeremy. This is, in many ways, the most intellectually interesting showdown. Both Jacob and Jeremy rejected the show, but they did it in fundamentally different ways. Jacob's rejection was a rejection of public life itself. He sought anonymity in a raw, unfiltered existence. Jeremy's rejection was a rejection of TLC's version of his life. He and Audrey then went on to create their own highly polished, heavily curated public life through social media, books, and their brand, beating 50%. Their confrontation would be a battle of philosophies. It would probably take place on Jeremy's new, pristine farm, a visual representation of the life he has built for himself. Jacob, ever the purist, would challenge the very foundation of Jeremy's brand. You left the show because you said you didn't want producers shaping your story. But isn't that exactly what you and Audrey do every single day on Instagram? You've just become your own producers. You perform for a camera. You create storylines. You sell a product. How is that more authentic? Isn't it just a different kind of fake? This is a direct assault on Jeremy's identity. Jeremy and Audrey pride themselves on their authenticity. Jeremy's defense would be that they control their own narrative. They aren't beholden to a network. They are sharing their life on their own terms. But Jacob would likely see this as a distinction without a difference. But is it your real life, or is it a highlight reel designed to sell an aspirational lifestyle? When I was criticizing the show, I was criticizing the very idea of turning your family into content. You just took that idea and monetized it for yourself. You didn't escape the machine. You just built your own smaller version of it. This would be a tense philosophical debate about the nature of true social media and what it means to live an authentic life in the 21st century. It would touch on their different approaches to faith, to family, and to legacy. Jeremy sees legacy as something you build, polish, and pass down. Jacob seems to see legacy as something you live authentically and privately, day by day. This confrontation might not have a clean resolution. It would expose the deep ideological chasm that has existed between the two brothers for years. It would reveal that while both left the farm, they have landed in two completely different universes. And so after these four explosive confrontations, we would arrive at the finale. An episode where the raw, bleeding wounds of the family are on full display. Jacob, having had his say with each of them, would have laid all the cards on the table. The final question for the family and for the audience would be, can this family be saved? The power of the final cut means Jacob could end the series on his own terms. He could end it with a hopeful note of reconciliation, or he could end it with a bleak, definitive statement on the irreparable damage caused by fame. The fate of the Roloff family narrative would, for the first time ever, be in the hands of its most outspoken critic. So there you have it, the full, detailed breakdown of what our insiders are calling the most dramatic, game-changing plan in LPBW history. A 6-episode documentary event that would effectively be The Crown meets Succession, set on a pumpkin farm in Oregon. Now, we must reiterate, this is, as of this moment, an insider report, an exclusive theory based on whispers coming from the production world. We don't have a signed contract or a press release from TLC, but let me ask you this, doesn't it all just make perfect sense? The show is dying, the family is fractured, the network needs a Hail Mary, Matt Roloff needs to fix his legacy, and Jacob Roloff, after years of being the silenced truth teller, is finally being offered the one thing he's always wanted: control over his own story. The pieces fit too perfectly for this to be pure fantasy. This isn't just a gimmick to pop a rating. This is the logical conclusion to the entire 25-season arc of Little People, Big World. It's the final act where the secrets are exposed and the family is forced to confront the true cost of their fame. Whether it leads to healing or to the family's complete and final implosion, it would be the most honest and compelling television they have ever produced. It would be a cultural moment for reality TV. We want to know what you think. Is this real? Is it a brilliant production fantasy? Do you believe Jacob would do it if he had the final cut? And who do you think he would be hardest on? Matt, Amy, Zach, or Jeremy? Get in the comments section right now and let's discuss this. I want to hear all your theories, and I cannot stress this enough. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because if and when the first official confirmation of this story breaks or the first denial, LPBW Update will be here to break it all down for you instantly. This is the story we've all been waiting for. The return of the lost Roloff isn't just a new season, it's a reckoning. Thank you for joining us on LPBW Update. We'll see you in the next video.